Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. We are here with our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday, where every single Wednesday we are putting wellness before weight loss. However, we are teaching people the fundamentals of how to transform their body and not just take the weight off, but keep it off for life. And beyond that, why it's so important to boost your metabolism, what it does for your energy, your circulation, and overall health. So whether you've lost the weight, you've kept it off, great. We're going to get deep into that for sure on these Wednesday shows. But if you still have a little bit to go or a lot, well, we're going to be able to help you with that as well. So now here's the big topic of today's show. I've been talking about this on many other podcasts and doing many other interviews. So I said, since this is such a popular topic, why don't we talk about it and cover it on the Cabral Concept as well? And that is the notion of the quarantine 15, or what people are now labeling as each month goes by, the quarantine 20. So what does that mean? Well, it's the 15 or 20 pounds you may have gained over the past 3, 4, or 5 months. Why this is important is that we have to understand that a lot of the same things that happen around the holidays are happening right now. It's maybe a little bit more time at home, consuming maybe a little bit more alcohol, consuming a little bit more comfort food, many of the things that we might do with friends or family, or much of the time when we have more downtime, leisure time, or simply more time to ourselves and at night. So what I want to do is I want to start to dissect this a little bit, because it's not about just giving you a program to help you lose the weight. Of course, we can do that, right? Of course, we can do that, and so can a lot of other people. What we need to know, though, is why did this happen in the first place? Now, you might say, well, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, and that's why I'm stress eating. And I would say, okay, good, because now you're a little bit more self-aware as to why it's happening. Remember, you never want to really begin a plan to undo things that you would like to have be undone unless you know why it is. So for me, I always go back to, I ask the person, how do we think that we got here? Whether it's a health issue, a weight issue, or an aging issue, meaning like you feel like you're aging at a much more rapid rate than you have in the past. Well, let's think about this. Do we know how we got here? And with the quarantine 15, we'll call it quarantine 20, whatever you want to call it. I like quarantine 15. It kind of rhymes a little bit. So let's go with that for right now for today's discussion. And regardless of the weight, maybe it's 5 pounds, maybe it's 50 pounds. It's all the same. It really is. Let's go with weight loss in general. Do you know how you got here? And if it was a shorter period of time where you've gained the weight, well, it's easier to look back. Now, let's say it's around the March of this year, 5 months ago, 6 months ago or so. Okay. So let's look at it right now. Do we know how we got here? Well, we have to start to dissect what's going on with our life. And the best way to do that is reverse engineer and simply to look at what were our variables of change. And I speak with this all the time with people, because people will get really great results. We won't hear from them for years. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, they come back to us and they say, oh, I slid back here, this happened. And we say, okay, well, that's okay. Like it's okay. Life happens. There's no doubt about it. There's no judgment on my end for sure. There's no judgment on any of our team's end, because we've all been there. I mean, I've relapsed more times than I care to share, but now I'm good. And because what happens is that the likelihood that you slide back a little bit, well, it's pretty much near 100%. It's just kind of like to what degree. So let's say you even slid back all the way with a health program or a weight program. The nice thing is that you can learn a lot from it. You learn how your body slides back. What are your go-tos? What really throws you off the most? And so let me just take an example from working with a real-world client. So we're chatting with them, talking, and I say, okay, you've gained 15 pounds, 16 pounds specifically. How do we think that happened? And they say, oh, I don't know. It just slowly started to come on. And then all of a sudden now it's harder to take off. All right, well, let's talk about it. Before March, tell me about what your nutrition looked like. And they would go into it. And I want you to think about this as well. It's nice to be able to journal it. And I would just say, well, what changed? So, well, they're like, well, it was more home cooking. And well, I say, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That kind of sounds like it might be good. Well, they say, no, it ended up being more of the breads and pastas and comfort foods. I say, okay, well, how many times a week before were you doing that? And how many times a week now were you doing it? Or are you doing it? Because maybe they stopped. And they say, well, before it might have been once a week. And I say, okay, well, how many times now? Well, more like 3 to 4. And I always go on the higher side. So I'm like, okay, 4 times a week. Got it. Okay, so you went from 1 to 4. Great. Well, what do the other days look like? Did those remain good or not? They're like, well, and you start to get more into it, right? That's why you have to be honest with yourself. So they'll say, well, on those nights too, I'm probably drinking a little bit more wine than I used to. I said, okay, nope. Again, no judgment here. How many days previous to this March were you drinking wine at night? They said, well, probably 2 nights a week. Okay, 2 nights a week, good. How many times now would you say that you're having wine or alcohol or something like that a week? And they say, pretty much every night, if they're being honest, right? Well, 5, 6 times a week. Okay, so we've gone from the bread, pasta, comfort-based foods from once a week or so to 4 times a week, okay? And then we've gone from the alcohol once or twice a week to now 5, 6 times a week, near daily. Okay, so I just want to say, those are 2 great places for us to look at, because really what we're talking about, people say empty calories all the time, but truly these are empty calories. I mean, these are calories without a whole lot of nutrition in them. Alcohol, no nutrition. Breads and pasta, yeah, there's some nutrients in there, but certainly they don't replace or supersede any of the much better foods. And we're talking about inflammatory, higher glycemic foods here. And for all the benefits that you get from alcohol, 10x that from all the negatives. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a drink every once in a while. I'm not saying that. And I'm also not saying that you can't have some bread and pasta every once in a while. I do it myself. So I'm not saying that you can't do that. What I'm saying is it's a multiple times per week that could get to you. How many? Well, it depends on your body, but it also depends on the inflammation that builds up. I don't think anybody's good with it more than 3 times a week, even if you're an ectomorph, all of that, because you're still building up inflammation. It can take up to 36 hours to get rid of that inflammation from one meal. That means a day and a half. That means you really shouldn't be having a cheat or a flex meal, whatever you want to call it, comfort food, more than every other day. I find the sweet spot for most people is about once or twice a week with 2 days in between. That means a Wednesday and a Saturday would work, a Thursday and a Sunday. Something like that seems to be best for most people. It gives time for the inflammation to subside, blood sugar to rebalance, hormones to rebalance, etc. But again, it really depends on the person. The first most important thing is that you don't have any of those flex meals until you get back to your goal weight. Now, because that's the fastest way to do it. Of course, you can still have a once a week flex meal, even if you were trying to take the weight off. It's just it happens so much faster when you keep the body in a state of equilibrium and true fat burning without throwing it off for one of those days. That's all. We do it for 21 days. It works exceptionally well. We'll get there in one moment. So if you can see, I'm working through the process, but I'm not done yet, right? The easiest way is to talk with people about the intake, right? So we talked about the cheat meals, things like that. We talked about the alcohol, but then I'm into the nervous eating or the snacking. I asked them, listen, what was your snacking like before March? They said, well, I almost never snacked. But now that I'm home, well, the food's there. And I said, okay, tell me about that a little bit. When will you have a snack? Well, sometimes mid-afternoon. The kids are there. I'm cooking dinner. I'm hungry. I don't want to wait. Kids are driving me crazy. My spouse is driving me crazy, whatever it might be, right? So you start to snack a little bit, or that's when the wine starts to creep in mid-afternoon. So I get it. But now, okay, that's another variable, right? Okay, so now we have most snacks are processed food. Or I ask, what does that snack usually consist of? And most people aren't telling me celery and carrots and hummus, right? They're just not saying that. They're typically saying, or a handful of nuts. They are saying, oh, well, it's whatever's lying around, maybe some pretzels or things like that the kids might be eating. Okay, again, I get it, but that's another variable that changed. So now I have 3 main variables: an increase in flex meals, I have an increase in snacking, and I have an increase in alcohol. Of course, any one of those could add weight gain. You add 3 more or 3 total, now we're really talking. So the other part I ask is well, what's your movement been like? How many days a week did you exercise before March? And they say, well, really not that many. I really wasn't doing any exercise, but I was walking more. And I say, okay, well, tell me about that. They say, well, I was always walking to work. I was walking to the train. I was doing this. I was walking the kids to school, whatever it might be. And I say, okay, how much is that going on now? They say, well, far less because we're inside most of the time. And I say, okay, well, again, All I'm trying to do in this situation, and I recommend our integrative health practitioners do the same, is that you're getting the client to show themselves what is going on. And not in a negative way, because again, there's no judgment because we're all human. If people look at my life, they'd be like, well, why are you doing that? That's self-destructive. That's not the best thing that you could be doing, right? So I'm sure there are certain things that I do that maybe I'm not as aware of until someone brings it to my attention. And that's why I have coaches as well. I'm always working with people to up-level myself, simply because I think we all need an outside perspective. That's it. Even if we're working hard, even if we're trying. And that's why health coaching is just such a great thing, to be able to work with someone that does a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And they can just kind of bring in and maybe bridge the gaps that you have in your life right now. But that's what we do. We look at the variables of change. So less movement and more food coming in, right? So we're not even yet talking about metabolic and hormones and all that. We can work on those things for sure, but why not at least get back to a place that we were already at and then make it more realistic being in a state of quarantine that we might be for the next however many months. So this is what I do. I'm going to ask them, how did you get here? And then we have to know what you need to do in order to reverse it. Less alcohol, less processed foods, less snacking, and more movement. You might say, well, that's obviously very simple. Of course it's simple, right? Of course it's simple. That doesn't mean that it's easy. Simple does not mean easy. And here's why. You have to ask yourself if you're willing to do it. Most keys to success are pretty simple. They really are. You need to learn this for this job. You need to learn this to achieve this amount of success. You need to do this in order to get that, right? You're like, okay, there are blueprints laid out there for pretty much anything. I mean, maybe they're not simple, but you have the answers. The choice, though, is, are you willing to do it? And that really comes down to, is it a priority in your life? Or is the right time right now in your life? And the answer sometimes, if you're really honest, is no. Now, if the answer is no, you need to weigh the consequences of, what if you don't do it? What if you continue to gain weight? What if this leads to a potential disease? Because gaining weight, I mean, it's correlated with every major cause of mortality. I mean, it really is. When we look at weight gain, we look at a lot of the same effects as smoking. We look at weight gain, it increases cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and stroke. I mean, you're talking about all metabolic syndrome and all of the major causes of disease and mortality. So what I would say to you is that, again, I'm not trying to put fear into your head or your mind, because I know there's a lot of that right now. What I'm just trying to do is show you the importance of maintaining a healthy body weight. And again, you don't have to be super lean. That's not what it's all about. It's actually maintaining a healthy body weight for you. There are many people in my practice, many people that I know. I mean, I always think back very specifically to my personal training days. I worked with this one client. I'll leave his name out specifically, but he's about 5'8". Okay, he's 5'8", and he weighed about 225 pounds, 230 pounds. I got him down to about 205, 200 pounds. At that point, he was actually beginning to look a little too gaunt in the face and overall in the body. Now you might say, well, that seems crazy. How can someone 5'8" be at a healthy weight for them around 200 pounds? Well, the truth is that he was as much of a pure endomorph as I've ever seen. His calves were the size of most people's waist. That's not an exaggeration. That's literally, well, maybe that's a bit of exaggeration. All right, let me take that back a little bit. His calves were over 20 inches wide. They were around like 23 inches wide. So they would be the size of most people's thighs. And that was his calf. Now, that isn't from doing calf raises. That is genetics. That is the constitutional type or the dosha called the endomorph or the kapha body type. He had a lot of muscle mass on his body naturally. We never had to train for a lot of muscle mass. We did it a couple times a week, keep those bones strong, muscle strong. But a lot of it was also, okay, what can we do? Not heavy weights, because you've got the mass. How do we speed up that metabolism? So, but I've also worked with other people, ectomorphs, at 5'8", 135 pounds for a good weight. That is a massive swing. Well, one's a pure ectomorph and one's basically a pure kapha or endomorph. So we have to look at the body uniquely. Now remember, ideally you are fitting within your BMI. But I've done a whole separate show on BMI. So what we'll do is we'll link that up here today. Today's show number is StephenCabral.com/1664. Head on over to StephenCabral.com/1664. We'll try to link up the previous show on BMI. And why don't we link up the one on waist-hip ratio as well, since those are waist-hip ratio especially crucial for overall health. Okay, so once we've asked ourselves if we're willing to do it and if it's a priority, and we've decided that we can't not do it. So here's the thing. A lot of times with our goals, we don't want to do the work, right? I mean, it's so much easier to enjoy your favorite foods, even processed foods, all those things, to drink some alcohol, to not exercise. Those things are easier to do, and oftentimes they're more enjoyable for the vast majority of people. It's actually an outlier crowd that loves to go out there and exercise every day, that loves to eat all those vegetables, all that. You know, I know a lot of those outliers, but for the majority of people, so again, really reaching out to integrative health practitioners and other doctors out there, is to understand that many of the people that you work with aren't necessarily in that category. They'd much rather sit on the couch, relax, eat some comfort food. And again, like, no judgment on my part, that's pretty enjoyable. I mean, it really is. I'm not going to deny sitting on the couch, having some snacks and watching some TV at night isn't enjoyable. It is. So here's the thing, though. The problem is that we need to override that for many other factors, because if we want a strong mood, if we want a strong body, and we want a lot of energy, we can't do those things, right? So it's kind of this dichotomy of truth, is like, the truth is eating processed food and relaxing is pretty enjoyable. That's the truth for most people. But the truth is also that exercising, eating well is really enjoyable as well, because you get to reap all of the benefits of lots of energy, lots of ambition, lots of drive, feeling great. But oftentimes you don't even know that those exist on the other side, because you've been on the snacking and relaxing side too much. So that's why when you get back to the exercise in the beginning, sure, it doesn't feel great. But after a while, you say, oh, wow, the boost that I get in neurotransmitters and in energy and in clarity of thinking, well, this is why I'm going to continue with it, right? So let's look at that. So what I always say is, if you don't want to do something, but you know that you should, you have to focus on your why. Your why could be living longer for your children, your grandchildren. It could be living without pain and dis-ease in the body, and also better overall quality of life. But then realizing this, that you still get to have all of your favorite foods. You can have some alcohol every once in a while. You can do all of those things. You can still sit on the couch at night. So you just want to find balance. Moderation is not balance. Never let anybody tell you that, right? Having snacks every day, having alcohol every day is not moderation, even if it's a drink or two. That is not moderation, okay? That does not create balance in the body, because you're constantly bombarding yourself and filling up that rain barrel every single day with inflammation, which equals inflammaging. So here's what we want to do. We've realized we know how we got here. Now we know, let's call it the price that we need to pay, right? What we need to do in order to reverse that process. Then we need to decide if it's a priority right now and if we're willing to move forward. If we are, because we don't want to live a life of regrets and we don't want to let our health slide downhill because it's a slippery slope, then we have to be bold and we need to get started right away. Don't get started next week, right? Don't get started next week. What can you do today or tomorrow? Walk 10,000 steps, not have a snack. Maybe you don't eliminate everything all at once, but I'll tell you this. I really believe this. I mean, I've been in practice quite a while now. Been helping people for over 20 years transform their body, get healthy, all those great things. I really have seen lives change. But the best way that I'm able to do that is with a 21-day plan. Now, you might have heard, 21 days creates a new habit, all of those things. I teach that as well. The actual number is an average of about 66 days. However, the 21 days starts to solidify the habits that you're going to get. The reason why I use 21 days is more from a metabolic, healthy blood sugar balancing, healthy inflammation, healthy hormones. And it's also where you seem to max out your initial results, 21 days to 28 days. So there's a very specific reason we've created that, magical 21 days. Like, why is that the number? Well, when we look at it, the body actually seems to really do well with a little bit of a depletion for those first 3 weeks. And that's why you look at low carb, you look at keto, you look at all these different things. Okay, good. But if you're a clinical practitioner and you're running labs, you actually see after about the 28-day mark, especially with a lot of women, that their hormones start to become imbalanced. That could be a drop in progesterone, leading to estrogen dominance. It could be a spike in thyroid-stimulating hormone, which actually means a lowering of active thyroid hormones, such as T3. And you might also see a beginning of hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis stress, just called adrenal-based fatigue, where we might actually begin to see a spike in cortisol or a drop in AM cortisol with a subsequent relative high evening cortisol, which then affects sleep. So again, from a metabolic standpoint, we like 21 to 28 days. But here's the nice thing, and this is the whole reason I'm mentioning this. Instead of gradual change, I prefer the whole kitchen sink. I really do. Because you're going to see tremendous benefit. People are willing to stick with things if they see results. People don't stick with things if they don't see results. When you do a 7-day, 14-day, or 21-day functional medicine detox, you see results, and you see dramatic results. I mean, people lose 5 to 7 pounds that first week. People lose up to 21 pounds in 21 days. Some 12, some 21. How much are you going to lose? Well, it depends on how much you have to lose, right? If you have 80 pounds to lose, you very well could lose 15 to 20 pounds in that 3 weeks. And people say, well, it's all water weight. Well, that's not necessarily true. It's inflammation. It's toxic water weight. Go back to my show on toxic water weight. You'll begin to understand that that body was holding that water because of inflammation. Your body wasn't holding that water because it needed to be hydrated. No. That is not it at all. So what happens is you have to correct the underlying pathways that's leading to inflammation. So what I'm going to share with you right now is my approach that I would do if I had to lose that 15 to 20 pounds that I can't recommend enough. And then, of course, I want you to maintain. I have free follow-up shows on all the topics I'm about to speak about. So what I'm going to do is if you head over to stevencabral.com/1664, what we'll do is we'll embed those shows right below this one. So you can just listen to them all concurrently. So what I want you to do is this, a 21-day functional medicine detox, okay? You can choose the brand that I formulate, or you can choose your other favorite functional medicine-based plan. And if you're working with an integrative health practitioner or a naturopathic doctor or someone that specializes in this, great. Just say, hey, how does this compare? And just look at the one that I formulated. Great. And again, you're welcome to do that. These are just options for you. But I can tell you this, it's guaranteed to work, right? So, I mean, that's the nice thing is like we literally guarantee it to work. And how can we do that? Well, we've just done it for so long. I mean, that's the difference is that we know it works in the real world, that there's no hype behind it. Because when we say that if you have to lose 20 pounds, well, you're probably going to lose 10 in that 21 days, minimum, right? That's minimum. And then you'll lose another 1.5 to 2 pounds for the next week or so. And the next week after that, you're going to be there within 4 to 6 weeks. I really believe that everyone should be able to lose 15 to 20 pounds within 6 to 8 weeks maximum. That's if you have the 20 pounds to lose. Because I just know that people can lose on average 2 pounds a week, and you're going to lose a little bit more in the beginning. So people lose about 1% of their body weight per week after they've lost their initial thrust, right? So if you weigh 200 pounds, okay, you lose 2 pounds a week. If you weigh 180, 1.8. And that's just, it's easy math, and I've seen it proven out over the years. I mean, again, I can't recommend this enough. A 21-day functional medicine detox. Well, what's the difference? Well, it's opened up liver detox pathways, helping to re-regulate normal homeostasis in the body. But what it's also doing is this. It combines strategic intermittent fasting, strategic autophagy, and it's also an elimination-based diet. So it's giving you kind of all in one. So that's the remarkable thing about it. That's why I think people succeed to such a great degree. The other thing I like about a good detox, again, we're not talking about juicing, nothing wrong with that, but it's not a detox. We're not talking about intestinal cleanses, nothing wrong with that, but it's not a detox. Very, very different things. Is that we're working also with the crowding out effect. So you're not hungry, or you're not supposed to be hungry because you're actually adding in lots of good nutritious foods. And after about 5 to 7 days, it's helping to re-regulate those taste buds again. And that's because you're re-regulating normal healthy levels of blood sugar and hormones, right? But it takes a little time to get there. So it is mind over matter, because you can do this, it's not difficult, for those first 5 days or so. After that, for most people, it's smooth sailing, right? And you can choose to do the intermittent fasting days, the longer fasting days, on weeks 2 or week 3. And again, the detox podcast I'll link up because I don't have enough time here today, will teach you how to do all of the different variations. And you can choose the one that's easiest for you or best for you. Okay, so the next one is this. After you do the 21 days, if you still have more to go or you want to give your metabolism a boost, you can have a really nice cheat meal of anything that you would like. Really enjoy yourself after it's over for a meal. And then you can move into our Fatlocity system. Or you might say, well, I don't kind of necessarily want to go into another program. Well, that's okay. That's up to you. It depends if you have a lot more weight to lose or not. But what I would say after that is there's a podcast called How Not to Retox After a Detox. And my brother-in-law actually gave me the name for that one, which I think is great because you don't want to just slide back to where you were. However, you want to be able to enjoy your life and certainly add additional foods back in. That I totally understand. I do a detox myself every quarter. So what you want to do is you want to begin to add back in more starches, more of those comfort-based foods that you enjoy. But you need to figure out how much your body can tolerate. So that show will teach you that, how to not retox after a detox. And there's another show called How to Transition Off a Low-Carb Diet. And that one I think most people should be listening to as well. Okay, so that really talks about that, how you can move back towards a really simple, healthy diet. And I've already given you my recommendations that after you finish your 21 days, now, again, if you have a little bit more weight to lose, not a problem. Do that once a week refeeding meal or cheat meal or flex meal, again, whatever the name you want to call it is, of your favorite foods. Then when you've lost all the weight that you need to lose, you're back to your ideal weight, great. See if you can do twice a week if you choose to. Remember, you don't need to eat poor quality food. It's just for people that choose to, right? So once a week for sure, I'm eating some type of bread because I thoroughly enjoy it. But at no point do I say, oh, this sourdough bread is so healthy for me because of this, this, and this. No, I would be kidding myself if I did that. Now, is it healthier than certain other versions? Of course. I'm eating it because I like the taste of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't drink alcohol very often. That's the truth, because I don't like what it does to my body from a delayed effect. I don't like how it reduces my heart rate variability. I don't like how it makes me a little bit more lethargic the next day. Just a little bit, but it's there. But every once in a while, I do have a drink, for sure. I have a drink with some friends. I have a drink with family, whatever it might be. And every once in a while, I decide to do that. I don't kid myself, though, and say, oh, I'm doing this because it's healthy for me. It's healthy for my heart. No, I don't do it for that. So here's the thing. You can still enjoy all of the things that you love in life. Nothing wrong with that. And you'll probably be able to do it once you've lost the weight. You'll be able to do it twice a week, most likely. Just keep it 2 days apart in between and start to put into practice a lot of the other things that I talk about. A smoothie a day, 12 to 14 hours, maybe a little bit more of intermittent fasting, stopping eating 3 to 4 hours before bed. Again, go back to previous podcasts. All the information is there. It's all free. It's also in my book, The Rain Barrel Effect. But if you begin to really make these a part of your lifestyle, no rush, but make them a part of your lifestyle, you're going to be able to create more of this metabolic flexibility. And that allows you to have this cheat meal or some alcohol, whatever it might be, and it just doesn't affect you to the same extent. You don't gain all the weight, or you can lose it within the next day or so. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, that's what I would look at. Part of it's mind, right? Part of it's psychology, and then part of it is actually the physiology of what you need to do to lose that weight. So all the podcasts will be linked up today at stephencabral.com/1664. I just walk you through all the different plans. Again, all the information is there. Choose your favorite formulas, choose your favorite brands that you want to do. But for sure, we're always here to help should you need our help. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, if this podcast was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.